Good morning, Little Masters, and welcome back to today's Tolkien Times. I'm the Man of the West, also from the Prancing Pony podcast. Let's go ahead and get started with today's Tolkien Tuesday. Now, over the last several weeks, in fact, this entire first series, I've talked about the drama leading up to the publication of The Lord of the Rings, the possible switch to Collins in order to get the Silmarillion published as well, and the return to Tolkien and Unwin because something would be better than nothing. Now, last week, we saw Rayner Unwin convince his father, Sir Stanley Unwin, that The Lord of the Rings was a work of genius. He's right, and that it needed to be published. But we also learned that it could not possibly be published as a single volume, or it would have been priced at £3 10 shillings, the equivalent of nearly £130 today, or over $160. Now, that meant splitting it up into multiple volumes, which suddenly introduced a problem of titles. And that's where we're going to pick up today with letter number 136, written to Rayner Unwin on the 24th of March, 1953. Dear Rayner, I have intended for some time to write to you as the contract day, 25 March, steadily drew nearer, and found me still enmeshed in troubles that gathered upon me the moment I had signed. And here I am on the eve. Now, Tolkien goes on to detail some of those troubles, including Edith's poor health and a household move. He then offers at least the first 2 volumes by the end of March, just a week late, so he's done a lot better than Sean and I did on our first book, it has to be said. In fact, he asks Rayner if it would be useful if I sent now at once the first book, which is the longest of all, which is quite ready and is matched by a spare corrected copy. If you care to wire or phone me, I could dispatch book 1 tomorrow. Now, that's a way to placate a publisher, but I got to say, Tolkien, putting it down there is burying the lead. I think I would have opened up with that. In the postscript, though, we start to get an inkling about Tolkien's concern regarding the titles of the 3 volumes. This is a problem he hadn't had to previously consider. And here's that postscript in its entirety. P.S. I have given some thought to the matter of subtitles for the volumes which you thought were desirable, but I do not find it easy, as the books, though they must be grouped in pairs, are not really paired, and the middle pair, 3 and 4, are not really related. Would it not do if the book titles were used? For example, The Lord of the Rings Volume 1, The Ring Sets Out, and The Ring Goes South, Volume 2, The Treason of Isengard, and The Ring Goes East, and Volume 3, The War of the Ring, and The End of the Third Age. If not, I can at the moment think of nothing better than 1, The Shadow Grows, 2, The Ring in the Shadow, 3, The War of the Ring, or The Return of the King, J.R.R.T. Now, I should add that in a footnote to the postscript, now, that's professional digression right there. We learned from the best. We learned that a list of contents to The Lord of the Rings written by Tolkien and included in the manuscript of that book at Marquette University in Milwaukee, we were just there for our first ever moot last year, by the way, has a different set of titles. Volume 1, The First Journey and the Journey of the 9 Companions. Volume 2, The Treason of Isengard and the Journey of the Ring-Bearers. And Volume 3, The War of the Ring and the End of the Third Age. Now, he ended up sending the manuscript for what we now know as the Fellowship of the Ring soon after, but not as soon as he'd hoped. We read in letter number 137, Dear Rayner, I am extremely sorry that it is already 11 days after the end of the month, March, but I've had a very bad time indeed, far worse even than I feared. In spite of every care, the move proved disastrously dislocating, and instead of 2 days, I've spent 10 in endless labor, and I still cannot lay my hands on many papers and notes that I need. I've moved before too, Professor, and it's always worse than you think. Heck, I just redid my office to start this show, and it's still not done, so I feel you. He then says that while he missed the mailman on this day, he's sending the manuscript in 2 packets the following Monday. But then we get a glimpse of some of the other matters concerning him as he mentions the foreword, the appendices, and the facsimiles of the burned and torn pages of the runic book originally planned to appear at the beginning of Book 2, Chapter 5. Now, these, of course, are the damaged pages from the Book of Mazarbul. But you can imagine that a publisher already concerned with costs isn't going to be keen on printing full images of these creations. Going back to Carpenter's biography, we read, the production problems that Tolkien now encountered were similar to those he had met with in The Hobbit. He cared very much that his beloved book should be published as he had intended, but once again, many of his designs were modified, frequently through considerations of cost. Among items that were declared to be too expensive were red ink for the fire letters which appear on the ring, and the half-tone color process that would be necessary to reproduce the facsimile Tolkien had made of the Book of Mazarbul, a burnt and tattered volume that in the story is found in the mines of Moria. He was much saddened by this, for he had spent many hours making this facsimile, copying out the pages in runes and elvish writing, and then deliberately damaging them, burning the edges and smearing the paper with substances that looked like dried blood. All this work was now wasted. In fact, those pages would not be published until 1977, when they first appeared in the Tolkien calendar for that year. Now, for those of you watching this on YouTube, I've got a little special treat. In the most recent special edition of The Lord of the Rings, the one illustrated by Tolkien, they include the actual pages from the Book of Mazarbul, replicas or facsimiles of these, and they are fantastic. These are identical to what Tolkien himself created when he was making the book, including the lovely Elvish script on this one, or is it this one? I can't tell. It is. I think it was this way. But the pages are absolutely fantastic. I had the privilege of seeing these in person, at the originals in person at Marquette University last October, and I'm telling you, seeing these in the flesh, so to speak, was quite something. Now, for those of you who could not make that moot or the exhibit itself, you're going to want to try to see if you can get a hold of this book. It is called J.R.R. Tolkien, The Art of the Manuscript. It is available from Marquette University, and I'll see if I can get a link for you in the show notes so that you can order this. I believe it's only available in softcover now. I'm not certain about that, but it has images of all the items that were in that exhibit, including these pages. So, all right. Moving on, he was also deeply concerned about the maps. He says, maps are worrying me. One at least, which would then have to be rather large, is absolutely essential. I think 3 are needed. 1 of the Shire, 2 of Gondor, and 3, a general small-scale map of the whole field of action. Now, thankfully, those all made it, but not without some further challenges we'll get to next time, along with more back and forth on those titles, which clearly didn't make it much further. Now, if these few minutes leave you wanting more Tolkien content, be sure to check out the Prancing Pony podcast, where we've spent 7 years so far walking through the books, learning more about the professor and his works, and just having a nice chat at the pub about our favorite author. And please join me again tomorrow on today's Tolkien Times for Word Nerd Wednesday. Please like and subscribe on YouTube, follow or subscribe on your podcast apps to make sure each episode gets downloaded to your device. Follow at Tolkien Times on YouTube, Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok. And as Faramir says, go with the goodwill of all good men.